Oh, I know, I know. You think now to betray me?
No, but you will never listen. I tell you, I will not forget our adage.
We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Our eyes have yet to open.
Fear the old blood.
And welcome back to Devlog. In the last part I worked on level fixes, and in this part I work on level ending visuals. First, going over the design for the new level ending. It is very similar to the old level ending, although I re-edited some of the visual effects, visual design for this, and re-edited the visuals for how the collectibles are counted, the level deaths are counted, and the level time is counted. These now have an animated component to them. They increase and decrease over time. It's not just a static number appearing on screen. This is very obvious as to why I would want to make this change, to make it more dynamic and interesting. Discussing how this works, it is a set of 4 coroutines. This starts, there is a delay for the visuals to appear on screen. Then we run a coroutine for counting all of the collectibles. This runs through itself, and then at the end of it, if there is more collectibles, we'll add this +1, and then we'll run it again until it has reached the number of collectibles counted that the player has actually collected in this level. What this does when it counts itself is it creates one collectible animator, which is just static and placed in a pile at the end of the level in the UI. It creates one audio effect for this collectible piling down onto the pile, and then it changes the UI for the collectible counted amount on the actual UI. So this increases by 1, it says we have collected 1 collectible, the collectible has then appeared in the UI, animating down. We then play a sound effect for this. We will then increase the delay between the next collectible that we will collect. So this will get exponentially faster over time. So we create the effect, we increase the UI amount, we create the audio, we increase the time between each of these effects playing. And by increase, I mean decrease. So the first collectible could come down with half a second delay, the next with 0.4 seconds, the next with 0.3 seconds, the next 0.2, 0.15, 0.12, 5, so on and so forth. It gets exponentially faster the more collectibles the player collects. The reason for this is more satisfying and interesting, where the player has 1 collectible and then the rest rush in faster and faster, and also in levels where there is more collectibles or the player has 20 collectibles, I don't want the player to have a 10-second delay as they watch each of the collectibles fall down. I want it to have the animated emphasis of you collecting the single thing, and then have the exaggeration of everything coming down as a visual reward for the number of things you have collected. Once this is finished, we go over to the deaths amount. This is incredibly simple. It works in the exact same way. We increase this value by 1 every single loop of this function, and we also decrease the amount of delay time between each of the loop of the death function. So this would start at 0.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, so on and so forth. It gets faster and faster, and it becomes a lot more chaotic. This function is going to run a lot faster than the collectible function, because the death function is only an audio effect and a number ticking up. So I want it to be more satisfying, and also the amount of collectibles in each level is going to be roughly around 20, while the amount of deaths in a level could exponentially get a lot larger and could be in the thousands. I hope not. Don't be that bad at my game. But if it does, this amount is going to get faster and faster until it is happening within 0.001 of a second. The actual audio is going to get more chaotic and sillier. The actual audio, by the way, is just me going, ow, and then playing it in game. I'm the canon Pep-Pel voice. Pep-Pel sounds like me canonically. I'm a big fan of how the UI for the deaths works. I think it is incredibly silly. It's really goofy if you have a lot of deaths. It goes so quickly and counts up so fast that it just seems really comedic if the player has died more than 100 times the level, because it just ticks up and up and up and keeps getting exponentially faster, playing so many overlaying audio cues of Pep-Pel being hurt. It's really silly. And then finally we have the visual for the time of the level being counted. This may look like it is more complex because it is counting in obscure numbers, but is in fact very, very simple. I just take the time the level has taken to complete, I convert this to a minutes, seconds, milliseconds value, and then I count up a value every single loop of this function to meet this value. The only complexity is that the amount I count up each time is a very obtuse number. The reason for this is if I was counting just 1 second for every single loop, this wouldn't really look like the time is counting in an organic way, because I want the milliseconds and the actual second values to go through a random assortment of numbers as they reach the visual time it takes for the player to actually finish the level. So for this, every single loop of this function, I will just add 14.237 to the actual value. This goes exponentially faster and faster. It becomes a cluttered mess as the time looks like it is counting faster and faster towards how long it took the player to beat the level, but is in actuality just adding the same amount each tick of this loop. It's just getting so fast that you cannot particularly tell. Finally, once the player has finished this time counting down, I will either give the player a medal for their completion time, or they will have no medal. The way medals work is pretty simple, but I will discuss it in length later. But for this section, if the player has finished the level in a time that merits a reward from them, they will be given one of the free medals. This is actually fed to this UI script beforehand, so there's no real logic. It just registers if the player has been fed one of these medals. If they have, it creates a visual effect for this. This is just an animation of the medal appearing, and plays an audio cue for the player receiving the medal. There are 3 different medals. There is bronze, silver, and gold. They are all drawn by me, obviously, and they look silly and goofy. The canonical reason for this is that Pep-Pel made all the medals herself because she is narcissistic, and also I want them to look dumb. The way information is fed to this script is incredibly simple. At the end of a level I have a level logic script. This just records how long it took the player to beat the level. It calculates what medal the player would be awarded when they have beaten a level. It counts the player's deaths for this level, and it keeps track of the player's total collectibles and the amount of collectibles they have collected in this level. When we want to trigger this UI, all we have to do is, through the logic of this, which is also controlled by the level ending mimic that the player has to fight at the end of the levels, the UI is enabled, it drops down, the information is fed to it, and it triggers its functions. So it is very simple. It is just passing 4 different values into this script, which will then create the UI effect in accordance to what these 4 values are. Next we have the level medal logic and the actual visuals for this. The level medal logic is something I have wanted to add to Pep-Pel for a while, this being a incentive to finish levels as fast as possible. Since the game always counts the amount of time you maintain in a level, and it always keeps track of this in the top left of the screen, obviously trying to beat levels as fast as possible is an incentive and actual design for Pep-Pel, so having some kind of intrinsic reward behind this just makes sense. This is very, very simple. Each level has a time set up for the gold time, a time set up for the silver time, and a time set up for the bronze time. If the player's level time is under the gold, they achieve the gold. If it's under the silver, they achieve the silver. If it's under the bronze, they achieve the bronze. If it is higher than all these 3 values, you win nothing, loser. The way I actually finish and find these values is by playing through each level as fast as I possibly can, and then finding a reasonable time for gold based on these, and then I just minus a certain percentage to this to find the value for a silver time, and then minus a certain percentage from that to find the value for bronze time. Interestingly enough, my record time for the clay cottage is around 3 minutes. Not to brag or nothing, but I'm pretty good at Pep-Pel. And I find this very interesting because in my regular playing of Pep-Pel, you can probably tell that my usual time in playing the Clay Cottage is around 8 minutes when I play it normally, so it is very interesting to me to see just how much time I could save when playing through this level if I am actually trying to finish the level as fast as I possibly can. what I'm trying to get at is the Pep-Pel is a complex game with many facets to its design and enjoyability for the player, where you can play in multiple different ways. Please, oh please, buy my game. In terms of the level medal visuals, these are, as usual, mwah, chef's kiss. I really knocked it out of the park with this one. These are some really good visual designs for the player medals. I tried to design these to obviously look very goofy and silly because I like that in game design, but also at a glance be able to tell which of these is more important than the others, based both visually by colour and visually by the shape of these. The bronze medal is a circle with Pep-Pel's face, the silver medal is more of a shield shape with 3 stars, and the gold medal is a different shield shape with wings and a halo for Pep-Pel and some kind of swirly pattern on the fronts. They get exponentially more complicated in their design, which then both visually makes them look more important than the previous one. I then updated the visuals for the hub portals. In the hub of Pep-Pel, there is a portal to each different level. I wanted to update the visuals for this to be able to more easily display the values for each of these levels. As you may know, previously in Pep-Pel, the visual design for the portals would have a pile of collectibles which would go from a outline to filled in when the player has collected a collectible. I felt like this didn't read easily enough at a glance. If the player has collected all the collectibles, there could be some that are kind of obscured in the visual because they are placed haphazardly in the hub portals. So I wanted to make a very clear indicator of how many collectibles the player has collected in this level and the total number of collectibles in this level. This is very easy. I count the number of collectibles the player has collected, and then I show the visual. The only complexity is when I actually have to show this up. This will not appear when the player has not finished this level, or if the player has no collectibles for this level. If the player has a collectible or 2, this will appear when going back to the hub area. The reason for this is that I didn't want the collectible graphic to appear for every single level, even if the player has not started it, because I think that would make the hub area very messy for a player who's just started the game, where they would see the portal to the level's name, and then every other information about the level in the graphics. It would look a bit messy on the UI visually, and I only want this to display once the player has actually gone through the level, collected any number of collectibles past 0, or beaten the level. At that point, the player going into the hub area will be able to see the number of collectibles in this level and how many they have collected, because at that point they have already interacted with the level and I can give them further information about the level. We also display the player's level time for this level. This is how long they have taken to beat this level before. This is obviously only going to display if the player has beaten the level, because if they haven't, they don't have a time. We will also display the actual information for if the player has a trophy in this level, and if the player does not have gold, the best time for this level, we will show the time they have to beat in order to achieve a gold medal on this level. Interestingly enough, the easiest way to code if the player has a gold medal or not is not in fact to have a system in the save file to determine if the time the player has for this level is less than a record time for this level. In fact, the easier way to code this is to have a separate value in the save file which keeps track of if the player has a medal in this level, regardless of the player's actual completion time of this level, and then the only way to achieve this value, to edit this value, is by actually finishing a level with a current level time that is lower than the medal achieving time. So technically what I'm saying is, if you were to edit your save file, you could make the level completion time 99 minutes, while also making it so you have achieved the gold medal on this stage. The values for level completion time and if the player has a medal at the level is oddly separate from each other, simply because I did not want to manually edit the code for the save file to keep track of every single level's gold time, and it was easy to do that within a level. Finally, I included a percentage value next to each save file. I like when save slots have a percentage value. I rarely ever care about these or look at these unless they are 100%. Having some intrinsic value on each save slot to, at a glance, easily tell if the player has 100% of the game or not, I think is very visually interesting and satisfying to get this to 100. The way I calculate this is incredibly easy. I have a value for the number of collectibles that are contained within the game. I have a value for the number of levels contained within the game. I have a value for a third thing that I've forgotten. I add all of these together, each of these worth a different point. The player having a collectible is worth 1 point, the player beating a level is worth 10 points, the player collecting a bronze medal is worth 1 point, a silver medal is worth 2 points, and a gold medal is worth 3 points. I will then calculate the actual total for each save slot, so the number of collectibles in the save slot, the number of levels beaten, the number of medals earned in each level, and then I will calculate the actual total amount that the player could possibly earn. So, for example, if there is 100 collectibles across one level, the amount for this would be 110, because collectibles are worth 1 point each, and a level is worth 10 points. If the player has collected 59 of these, and not beat the level, they would have 59 points. To find the percentage, I just divide one number by the other, and that makes a percentage value, and that is very easily how I calculate the save percentage value of each save slot. And that is it for Devlog. As you could probably see in some of this gameplay footage of Pep-Pel, there is a lot of visual detailing going on in the hub area, and that is because I am working on the hub area of Pep-Pel next, because I need a hub area in the demo, or people will make fun of me, on the internet no less! Bye, Devlog over. I love you.